Yeah, so I'm here to talk about something a little bit different from the neuroscience domain, but over the last year that we are trying to build large language models to help neuroscientists for their work, and this is a joint work by UCL and also part of the BrainGPT project, and Microsoft was kindly enough to support in terms of compute. Which I'll talk about a bit more later. So really the agenda is to talk about the motivation behind this research, and I'll talk about the benchmark that we built to test both models as well as human experts, and I'll share with you the high-level results that we found, and I'll finishing off with my very rudimentary use experience with Microsoft Azure. So really the general problem setup is that there has been exponential growth of scientific literature. And if you just search neuroscience in Google Scholar, and even if you put a filter to be since 2020, there are over 100,000 hits. And research has shown that really scientific progress has slowed, and disruptive findings could go unnoticed due to this large expansion of literature and data. So in this project, we asked the question, can large language models be potentially one solution to mitigate this problem? As we all know that LLMs are typically trained on vast amounts of text, including scientific articles. And by interacting with some of the products, such as ChatGPT and Cloud, we know they're very good at mixing information from noisy signal at a very large scale. And also, really, by nature, they're generative models of their training data. So for those who aren't so familiar with large language models, really, the most typical ones are being optimized in this autoregressive fashion, where you're trying to predict what is the most likely word or token in a sequence. So for example, here, the example shows that hippocampus is known as the center for, so the most likely word could be memory or could be navigation, but it all depends on the training data of the model. And large language models these days typically based partially on the original transformer architecture. So we ask a more specific question is, can such a generative model capture the underlying patterns of neuroscience, which is a very, very large field with multiple sub-areas, and then there are all kinds of data and analysis being done. And this is really just like 5 main areas that I can find based on Journal of Neuroscience categories. To make a loose analogy here, so a good scientist learns to integrate information from reading the literature, from going to conferences like this, and also from running experiments. They build up this intuition gradually to be able to predict novel outcomes or suggest promising experiments to run. But they have very limited bandwidth. On the other hand, LLMs seem to have unparalleled processing capacity compared to human experts on that front. So really we're interested in, can large language models predict neuroscience experiment results by really pushing the boundary about what's known about neuroscience. Before I get into that, I need to briefly define 2 terms and their differences. So first is backward-looking versus forward-looking. So backward-looking really is about retrieving facts that you learned in the past, something you learned about this famous speech back in your history lesson. Whereas forward-looking is very different. It's about predicting the outcome of a future event. So here it's about who is likely to win this table tennis match based on their current scores, and then how you know about these 2 players' previous histories and matchups. So backward-looking is a very useful and well-evaluated task in large language model domain. So some of the examples that come to my mind are, for example, summarization, that you ask ChatGPT to summarize a paper for you, or question answering. In fact, there are many benchmarks these days that specifically evaluated the scientific reasoning abilities of these models. But how do we evaluate forward-looking abilities of LLMs? That's the goal we're trying to achieve in this project. So we proposed something called Brain Bench to predict neuroscience results. And as we know, scientific articles are written in a way, for example, the abstract often start with a background to actually describe the general domain and then the problems, and then you go into a bit depth about the problem that you're trying to study in this paper, and then you actually talk about the methods that you're going to apply, and then you state what kind of results that you achieve. So we utilize this kind of format, but we recruit a big group of neuroscientists to create alternative findings based on the background and the methods. To give you an example, so we keep the background and the methods the same, but we instruct our group of scientists to actually create these alternated examples. So here it's the original example says that emotion recognition centered on ventral and medial parts of the prefrontal cortex. And one of the altered finding changes the brain regions that they found this effect. So really there are all kinds of different ways that the scientists have created these fake results, but we instruct them to actually make sure that these changes have to be grammatically coherent to the writing of the article. So if you're not expert reading the modified version of the abstract, it shouldn't really sound weird, but if you're an expert reading, then you will realize maybe there's some kind of inconsistency between the background, the method, and the result, or just it violates some common sense understanding in neuroscience in general. So we created like hundreds of these test cases across different subdomains of neuroscience. Yeah, so we create these test cases and then we obviously put them to test. So we recruited yet another group of neuroscientists online, and we asked them to choose, given two versions of the same abstract, which one do you think is the more likely to be correct, and then we ask them to provide their confidence and then expertise. So this is just like a online interface that we build. Like so they have to click on either versions of the abstract to indicate that they find it to be more consistent with their understanding about the paper or in general about neuroscience. So we also obviously test the models, and we applied a very simplistic approach by simply feeding two versions to LLMs, and we compute the perplexity score. So perplexity is really a measure of surprise. So a lower perplexity means that the model finds a piece of statement or a sequence of text less surprising, and we convert that to models decision, so that so we think that model thinks that one of the statements is correct by going with the one that has a lower perplexity, and we take the absolute difference between the two to indicate the model's confidence. Yeah, so that's the whole picture of Brain Bench. That I'm just going to show you some of the results that we achieved by testing this benchmark on both human experts as well as models. Yeah, so this is the overarching picture that really across the 15, 16 models that we tested, they significantly outperformed human experts across all 5 domains in neuroscience. And one thing is interesting, as you might be able to see, that some of the bar plots have these hatches. So these are the instruction fine-tuned versions of that model family. And it's very interesting that actually these language fine-tuned models are not as good as their base models. And we have this hypothesis that it's possible that with all the instruction tuning, actually they're pushing the models towards a subspace where the models actually are kind of losing part of this ability to find the correct, scientifically correct statements. Yeah, so we were very surprised and suspicious that why the models are so good, and then naturally we asked a set of questions. And first, is it memorization, that because we know the models have been trained on a massive amount of data, and also is it possible that these changes that are introduced by our experts have somehow introduced some kind of local fluency change that pick up by the models. But really we hope that it is because the models are very good at integrating contextual information from the papers. So this is a very common metric that people use to rule out the fact that if a piece of text is memorized by the model. So the Z-lib score is like a text compression algo so the higher the number just means like the algo has like very difficult time to compress it. Perplexity is what I talk about, that if the score is very low, it just means that the model finds a piece of text very not surprising. So if the ratio is very high, that is an indicator that a piece of text or abstract is very likely to be part of the model's training set, because the model finds it very unsurprising, but actually a generic text compressor having trouble to actually compress to actually reduce the redundancy in a scientific writing, because papers are kind of complicated to compress. So maybe just focusing on the third panel here on the Galactica 120B model, because that's the oldest, but we happen to know that the model's training cutoff, and so here I'm actually visualizing documents, papers that are known to be part of the model's training set, as well as those that actually didn't make the model's training cutoff. And the message really is there is no distributional difference between the ones that have been trained on and the ones that we know couldn't possibly be trained on when the model was released. So there's no indication from this analysis that our test cases are memorized by the model. Moving on, so we are trying to rule out the fact that the model actually was not integrating contextual information, but somehow picking up these changes. So what I did was that I removed the background and the method of these test cases, and then chop the results into individual pieces, and then test them independently on the models. Because once you remove the background and the methods, if the model was relying on these changes introduced by our experts, then you shouldn't be expecting a massive performance degradation. But that's not the case. So once we remove the context, there is a massive decrease in performance across all the models that we tested. So there's a related analysis, because we were suspecting that, what if by providing the model with some kind of scientific context, but not the context that belong to the study, is already enough to sort of prompt the model to think like a scientist or to think like a neuroscientist? Would that help? Would that explain the superhuman performance we observed? So what I did was that I found a different paper, but from the same domain, but swapped the background and the methods, and then put it into the original test cases, and then we run the same analysis again. And the result shows that really by providing some kind of scientific writing context is helpful, but not as helpful as if you actually use the coherent context. It's slightly better than completely removing the context, but you really do need the consistent context to maximize the performance of the models. So we were also trying to gain a bit better understanding of how LLMs solve our benchmark. So this is an example where I plot the perplexity difference across the tokens. So anything above 0 means that at that point in time, up until that token, model would have made a correct decision, and anything below dashed zero line means that the model would have made an incorrect decision at that point in time. So really, here I'm just showing you two examples that the model seems to be doing something completely different. So the first example, the model is starting with an incorrect decision, and as it processes more tokens, it gradually changes its judgment to be the correct one. And the second one on the right is different. It shows that the model is starting off with a correct decision, but somehow as it reads more and more tokens, flips its decision, but later on actually flips back to be correct again. So overall, it's very interesting that the test cases that the model got right in the end, the model has less of these flips during the token processing process, whereas the ones that they actually got wrong at the end have slightly more these kind of flips. So we also find that large language models seem to be well calibrated, but make very different mistakes compared to human experts. So these are just three models of different sizes, and I'm plotting them using confidence against accuracy. So really, the more accurate, the more confident the models are, the more likely they're going to be correct. But on panel B, it shows that even though these models seem to be doing very well, they're not making the same kind of mistakes as the human experts. So the correlations between models and humans are very low, whereas the correlation between models are fairly high. This gives us an idea, can we utilize this to actually build human-machine team, to utilize this kind of high calibration but low correlation feature. I'm not going to the details because this actually is from a follow-up paper. But what we found was that there is some clever way to combine these two parties to actually even perform better compared to individual LLMs or human experts, even though we know that human experts on this task are not as good as the models. They still contribute in a way to build a much stronger human team pair. Also, we were very interested in specializing these pre-training models to really make them more useful to use for neuroscience, because while these models are trained on massive amount of text, we were wondering if giving more specialized training by giving the model 20 years of neuroscience papers, would it help for the model to actually achieve better on our benchmark. So we utilize this parameter-efficient fine-tuning approach called LoRa, that we took a pre-trained model and then we continued training on neuroscience publications, and then we called the resulting model BrainGPT. And yeah, so it was actually possible with quite minimum fine-tuning on fairly small scale data. The model was actually improved on our benchmark by a significant 3% using the Mistral base pre-train. And so some of the future work that we are focusing on, one of them obviously is trying to interpret even better why these models are performing so well on our task. One of the ideas is to perform some kind of training data ablation to actually understand which pieces of the literature are really helping the model. And then we're looking into other fine-tuning approaches that to provide contrastive negative examples to better tell the model that to actually tell the model the difference between original findings and the ones that are actually made up. And eventually we're interested in building application interface so that neuroscientists can actually use our model and the ecosystem around that to help them do more free-form Q&A and to help them, to inform them to design their experiments better by actually going through their hypothesis through our model, and our model will be able to provide them with probabilities, for example, to show that, oh, maybe one of the experiments could be more promising. Yeah, so I'll just end with my very rudimentary use of Microsoft Azure. So all of this work was done using the A100 virtual machines. And I personally found them to be super flexible. It just, there was no pain to actually set up, because I was familiar with using in-house servers, but for this time it really, like, there's very little learning curve in terms of the stuff that I need to know to actually set up and to actually spend more time on doing my own experiments. And also I briefly used the Azure OpenAI Studio, and specifically using the GPT-4 API, because we use the GPT-4 version to imitate our neuroscientists to also create a machine version of these alternative results. Yeah, just want to thank my amazing and a massive group of collaborators, who most of them are neuroscientists themselves. And thank you for your time and listening. So all the resources and models and weights and data sets are available on the website, and as well as on Hugging Face. And just want to shout out to my sponsors as well as Microsoft for kindly providing the massive compute that they provided.
Right, bear with me while I, for the first time, try and get the questions up. I've lost my pointer. Shift this one. This. Yeah. There should be questions.
Yes, I can just send them straight up to
Okay, they're on their way.
Okay.
There you go.
Whoa, it's
Look
not
at that. Okay. So, yes. My question's been gazumped.
badly ordered.
Okay, fine. How do you actually, I know you said, I recruited some neuroscientists online. That sounds more complicated than that sentence says. So how did you manage to do that?
It was really just via social media, and also because we are based in a psychology and neuroscience department, so it was fairly easy because a lot of our friends happen to be neuroscientists, and then it was a bit of a word of mouth thing. That actually exploded on social media. I think there are like over 2,400 people actually registered and then show interest that want to participate or using a final product of this. Yeah.
Okay, I have a slight follow-up question, which I'm going to sneak in here, which is, how did you analyze how they were distributed over your categories that you mentioned?
Yeah, of course, yes. So that's something that we want to make sure that they have the expertise to actually answer these questions. And first of all, we obviously ask like what kind of career level they're at. Most of them are faculty or postdoc, and also for each question, we ask them to report their expertise on that particular study, not the area they're in, because it's possible that you have like a very niche interest following that kind of line of work. We thought that was the most sensible way of making sure that they are the right people. And then, so there's additional results in the paper that actually shows that their confidence as well as their expertise correlate with their performance. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I get to ask my actual question. Oh no,
it's coming again.
So it's what have we got? Could different models be combined to improve the output further? And this is a two for price of one question. Did the different models identify the same surprising results?
Oh yeah, that's an amazing question. So as I briefly mentioned in the follow-up work, we did look into creating some kind of ensemble across human machine and also between models. I think definitely there is an opportunity to combine different models. I guess one potential risk is these models are pretty much trained on everything. So depending on their sort of post-training or their fine-tuning procedures done slightly differently, it might not be entirely possible, given if they're making the same kind of mistakes over and over, that will be not as helpful to try to combine them. But it will be very interesting to identify if they're finding the same results surprising at different levels.
And The next one, so the one at the bottom seems to have more likes, so I'm going to go for that one.
Sure.
So one of the original aims was to pick out disruptive novel research. Given your training on results that are expected, or not surprising because they're identified by experts, is there a danger the model will really pick out the expected results and not the unexpected results?
Oh yeah, definitely. So that's something that we actually made clear in the paper, that we're not trying to reinforce what people expected. Really, if our model at some point be used by neuroscientists or scientists more generally, we would hope that they actually use this, use the result of our system as like a badge of honor, says that, oh, actually, I have this result that goes against the common sense in neuroscience or in a particular domain, and that works. That just means that doesn't mean it's a false result or it's a incorrect result. It just means that there's more to it, that people actually need to spend more time trying to think about, is the field progressing in the right direction, or there are other voices that need to be heard, and so on. So yeah, totally. We're fully aware of the.
Okay, thank you. So where have we got likes to? How likely is it the articles used in the evaluation were part of the data set, even if they weren't memorized? So I guess you used a subset of papers, and they could have been in the wild as well when you ran.
Yeah, so we tried really hard to make sure that was not the case. Especially all the papers were published in late 2023, and then we actually manually went through this process where we're trying to find if there are existing preprints that predates the training cut of these models, and really we couldn't see any evidence that's the superhuman performance was because of the fact that these test cases were part of the training set. But yeah, I wish all these big companies told us exactly what piece of text that they train on, but I guess that's not possible at the moment.
Okay, and question at the top there. Did you consider, okay, so I think you said you used local resources and Azure, but what were the pros and cons of the two different approaches?
Yeah, so actually from my own research before this project, I mainly use local resources. But I think for projects like involving large language models, it has become kind of impossible to quickly set up local resources in a way that will allow you to actually do the actual research. So yeah, so I think the pros of using local resources is like you have everything under control, but you have to have a dedicated team to actually maintain them. And then I personally had to go through a lot of these painful process where I talked to my IT department to actually when my GPUs broke down, whereas you don't have any of this pain using Azure or any other cloud services.
What have we got? So are there any plans to open source the models on platforms like Hugging Face?
Oh yeah, so the current versions of the models are freely available on Hugging Face. So
yeah, and the following question there is, well, I think you talked about your experience of training models on Microsoft Azure, but particularly in terms of cost, was it
yeah,
more?
so we did some quick calculations. I can't remember the numbers, but I think specifically for our project, which was happened relatively quickly and had to iterate very quickly, I think it was very economical compared to buying A100s and stuff like that. And then just it saves a lot of pain, like I said, to actually maintain the server in-house. So.
And I think there's just time probably for one final question. Did the neuroscientist online? Oh, just a minute.
So many questions.
Did the neuroscientists online also have access to the methods and background for each given question?
Yes, so they were shown the entire abstract, and then basically the models and then human experts were shown the exact same thing. So it's the entire article, including background and method. So it's not only the results, otherwise it wouldn't make sense to test them.
Okay, can we thank Ken again? Thank you very much.
Thank you.